What's up, guys? Connor O'Hanlon here again today for another episode of the Con O Show. And today I have a guest. His name is Chandler Kouakou. I said I was going to say it right, but I didn't say it right the first time. But I did say it right the second time. And Chandler and I met the other day at a protest that I helped organize here in Doylestown, where we were protesting the murder of George Floyd, and we were protesting against racism. Chandler and I met towards the end of the protest because there were so many people there, which was awesome to see in a predominantly white area in the suburbs here. But we met, and Chandler gave a wonderful speech towards the end of the protest, and I wanted to make sure that I was amplifying Black voices during this time, rather than just me sitting on here like I normally do, giving like a rant about X, Y, or Z, being that I come from a position of privilege, being a young white man. So Chandler, would you like to take a moment to introduce yourself and say anything you'd like about yourself?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. I really enjoy when people actually give me a platform to speak, and then not only that, but actually have an audience that's going to listen to me. So once again, thank you for that. Hi, everyone. My name is Chandler Kouakou. I'm 21 years old. I'm currently a senior at Shippensburg University. I live in Bucks County. I've grown up here all my life, and growing up in a predominantly white area, it's just been a lot of ups and downs. And given the recent events, I just feel as if, now that everybody has a voice, I just need to make mine heard. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Yeah. So obviously we're recording this like a little bit over a week since the George Floyd incident happened, where he was murdered by the police. So there have been protests, obviously, across the entire United States and really across the world. It's been the largest outpouring since the assassination of Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
When did you decide that you wanted to get out and protest, and what was this your first time protesting? Have you protested before? Have you been involved in any other way before?
Right. So I saw all the media and everybody's showing Philly and Chicago and Minnesota, and I always wanted to have a voice, and being inspired by the protests that have been happening, with different celebrities to the general community members. Some officers I saw were quitting their jobs because they just decided that they can't stand for something like this anymore. And growing up in the area that I do, a lot of these people just wanted to push it under the rug. And that whole, saying, silence is violence, like, I actually believe that, because like, it only takes something to happen to me for you guys to understand that this is a problem. And I don't want it to get to that point. So, I was so inspired to just come out. And then as soon as I found out that, it was 20 minutes away from my house, I had to make that drive. I had to, go out and make a stand and make my voice heard. So that's why I got up at the end. I said what I had to say. I appreciated all those people who came out, and all those people who didn't look nothing like me, supporting people who look like me. And that was just the biggest motivation ever.
Yeah, it's interesting to point out, because how old did you say you were?
21.
21. Yeah, so I'm 24. So just the difference in experience between you and I. We've grown up in basically the same area.
Right.
So I don't know what town are you from? Percy? Yeah. We're literally like you said, 15,
like right
20
next
minutes.
door. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So but the experiences are they're similar, but they're different, because I can walk around at night and I don't have to worry about the police bothering me.
Right.
And I have those privileges. So have you had any specific experiences around here that open? Well, I mean, obviously, like you live with this every day, but like things that have opened your
Hmm.
eyes that it's not. Is it different here, or is it this? Is it the same, or is it like a mixture of
Right. I
different types
mean,
of?
yeah. So like even yesterday, I go to the public middle school, Central Middle School, just to work out because I do my mile and do all that. Um, and even just yesterday, an officer he pulled up and he slowed down and then he started looking at my friend and I, and we were like, oh, because like one of the biggest like problems right now is the fact that we don't even feel safe when we see an officer,
Mhm.
and then we should, but just it's just the facts that we don't. So he slowed down, he stopped and just looked at us, and I was like, okay, well, what's going on? So immediately took out my phone, started recording the whole situation, and he pulled around and came closer to us, like, what are you guys doing? What's going on? Just telling that we're gonna go work out, and always greeting them with sir, sir this, sir that, ma'am, because one of the things is that white children are grown up to, you know, they can talk to an officer a certain way. They can, we have a different talk with our parents when we're young about how to how to talk to an officer because we don't want to end up like George Floyd. We don't want to end up like anybody else. So he came up and spoke to him very properly. He gave us the respect that we respected him with. So what it comes down to is we'll give officers we will back up officers as long as they back up people who look like us. So that's that. Before that, probably around it was like a week after Trayvon's death. Going back, I spoke about this at the protest. I was
Mhm.
going on my way to school, and my neighbor actually he lives like less than 100 yards away from me, and we were just talking about because I wanted to get everybody else's take, and he told me that it was Trayvon Martin's fault, and that was like that's probably the biggest eye-opening sentence that has ever come to me because that's when I knew where I was. That's when I knew like I was like because before that growing up, you know, I have a whole I'm surrounded by white people and I grew up with their kids and there's so a lot of them are like my best friends to this day. But you know, just growing up, I didn't really see a difference between me and them because my parents surrounded me in a situation where I would succeed because my parents got here, they're the exception to the whole system, but which they're still being systematically messed up. But it's a different situation because I grew up with them, and then up to that whole Trayvon Martin part, I just felt like I was equal. But then that's when I was old enough and mature enough to actually understand what was going on in the world, and then that's when he told me that, and I was like, wow. And I was like, wow, how can a kid walk me home with some Skittles and a black sweatshirt, you know, just nobody should have to, walk outside of the house and then worry about if they're gonna come home or not. And then not only that, but you have the person who murdered that kid in cold blood and he was acquitted of that. That's that whole situation. Like that's when I knew where I was. And to see somebody that I grew up with be on the other side of that issue, it was it was heartbreaking. It was eye opening. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I looking back at my, for a lack of better term, radicalization, and because it's not, I don't view myself as a radical, but some might, and but so looking back at like my high school experience and thinking back to like what like triggered me to start thinking differently. One of the first things I remember, and again, like it'll it goes into another story. But one of the first things I remember was sitting in my bed in high school, and I saw a YouTube video about, I believe it was the Trayvon Martin shooting. But to be honest with you, there's so many of them that I don't remember which one it was. And it was just so eye-opening that I was like, wait, what happened? Because like, I like you said, I've dealt with the police. And I also try to be respectful to the police, but like, it's not the same situation for me.
Right.
So like, I remember some piggybacking off of that is like, I remember around that same time, I was walking around my best friend's neighborhood at night, and we were just hanging out, and some guy came out with his dog, and he was kind of threatening us. But if we weren't white, that definitely could have gone almost certainly would have went a different way.
Right.
And because he was threatened by two white kids that were just walking around the neighborhood, literally just walking around the neighborhood, I just don't even want to imagine what could have happened in that situation. And that's all like led me down a different path of like, okay, well now I need to understand other people's perspectives. And that's somewhat has opened my eyes to like, we're having this conversation today. And I've read about revolutionary leaders. Like I've read about Malcolm X, and I'm reading about Fred Hampton, like these people that we're not really taught about. Like we're taught about Martin Luther King Jr., but this is another topic, a whole another thing, but we're taught about that, but we're taught about the peaceful protests, protests, but we're not fully given the context of how much violence they took and how much violence was put upon the Black community for so long. Not even like a lot of people just think, oh, slavery ended, that's it, and that's not even close.
Nope, no, it's not.
So like, is there a specific, I have people that I look up to and have gotten inspiration from, all the way from, like I said, I've read about Malcolm X, and then all the way to like rappers like Killer Mike. I don't know if you know Killer Mike from Run the Jewels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's one of my favorites, also because I'm a Bernie crat. So to me, I like that he was, people like that, that make that kind of music and make art that is revolutionary and eye-opening. Is there someone that's like inspired you that way, or whether it be an artist, a leader, anybody like that?
My heroes in that sense would have to be my parents, my godparents, even my great grandmother. She marched with King.
Wow.
Which is a whole powerful story in itself. But when I look at people like Muhammad Ali, who always stood up for what he believed in, always backed the Black community up. He didn't have to. That's the thing. People who don't have to do it, who are making millions of dollars, have a whole legacy of their own, and they choose to stand up for what they believe in, because a lot of people are just content with what they have. And okay, respect to them. That's what, but the whole silence is violence thing. If you have social issues and you actually are an athlete or a huge leader in a positive influence in the society, then you have to voice your opinion for change. And it's people like Muhammad Ali who I really look up to. Muhammad Ali to LeBron, people who actually get active with the community and try and, change what society is today. And hopefully, with that in mind, I can be one of those people who can, lobby for change, because going back to the whole slavery reference, people think that slavery is over, so whatever, everything's okay. Slavery, even the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement is it was great. It was a turning point in American history. But the thing is that the job's not done. The job wasn't done after slavery. The job was done after civil rights. The job's not done now. So if we can all the people anybody who voices their opinion, anybody who voices their opinion for change in the positive direction to progress the nation, those are the people I look up to.
Awesome. I guess we can go in two different ways here, but I'd like to talk about, a little bit of what I was almost hitting on was, the whitewashing of Martin Luther King Jr. and other leaders like that, say like Muhammad Ali. I mean, I don't know.
Mhm.
I mean, you talk about Muhammad Ali. I don't know if a lot of people really understand the full extent to how powerful what he was saying was, especially at the time. But like a lot of people just hear like, oh yeah, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee type things. But
Mhm.
no, like he was, again, for a lack of a better word, he was a radical. And so
Absolutely.
was Martin Luther King.
Mhm.
Um, do you feel like that going through school, and I know you're in college now, but in say like in elementary school and in high school, that you were taught enough or even close to enough about the real truth of the injustices of throughout history, throughout United States history?
I love this question because this is one of the main ideas which I want to move for change. Growing up in the Penn Ridge School District, I'm not sure if it was the same over there, but growing up here, not once did we acknowledge Black History Month. Not once did we had MLK and we learned about the different topics, but okay, you can't focus your curriculum on one leader, however great he is, because you have MLK, he the face of the civil rights, but look at all those people behind him, and maybe well, it's not a maybe, it's a definite. If if teachers were even remotely allowed to even talk about that kind of stuff, then I wouldn't have had I would not have had that comment from my my neighbor on the bus.
Yep.
People want to be telling me, Chandler, slavery's dead or whatever. They no, it just wouldn't happen. So what I want to happen, because in today's education system, if you even talk about that kind of issue with a teacher, or if the teacher talks to the students rather about any type of social issue regarding race, um, shootings, they can get in trouble for that, which is weird to me because we learn about. I'm tired of the narrative that we have to learn about things 10 years from now in a history book. I should not have had to learn about Emmett Till or a whole bunch of other these everybody else in a African American studies class in college. That's way too late. That's way too late. We need to start learning about this stuff in you know I would say probably fifth grade going into sixth grade or something like that. But you know this whole narrative that we can't talk about social issues when they're happening in America in present time has to go away. And if you actually start the conversation with the youth, because the future of America is the youth, then we can change for a better tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with that more. For me personally, I can say that I did learn probably, I guess, more than what they were giving you in high school, from what it sounds like.
Right.
But like I did learn about Emmett Till in high school, but I also was in like specific classes that like kind of tailored that. Uh, like
Mm-hmm.
my U.S. history class in high school was a little bit more in depth on that kind of stuff because it was 3 semesters. So we had longer time to discuss more specific things. But yeah, you're right. Like there's a whatever. They politicize everything when it comes to education. So even though if it's a straight up fact that we know, all right, I'm drawing a blank on, was it Tamir Rice who was the kid with the toy gun?
With the yeah.
So like if we have an example with like Tamir Rice, who's a young kid who's playing with a toy gun. Like, look, I played with airsoft guns and stuff like that when I was younger.
Mm.
Does someone like that deserve to die? Of course not. But and it's so clear because in the video that they showed, they didn't even talk to him. They just pulled up within under 10 seconds, shot him dead.
Mm-hmm. And I want to capitalize on that point you just made.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, airsoft looked like the coolest thing to me.
Yeah, it was.
And I kept, you know, I would have to sneak around and then go to my neighbor's house to play airsoft with them because my dad and my mom wouldn't let me get my own airsoft gun. Looking back on that, I am so grateful that they made that decision. And when I came home one day and my dad said, "Look at the news. This is why because he had the maturity that I didn't to realize that, you know, everybody around here that I was playing airsoft with was white and, you know, they can do that kind of stuff. But a lot of these people see me as a threat even without a toy gun. So imagine if I had a toy gun and then the situation would have been 10 times worse. But, you know, that's a whole nother level of like the white privilege that I'm talking about, because you guys can do that. We cannot.
And you can extrapolate that there are not even toy guns. There are people with real guns that walk around.
Yep.
Absolute, like
Mm-hmm.
rifles, AR-15s, whatever you want to talk about. You know, like I know plenty of cool. Like I think guns are cool. I don't own any, but like
Right.
they're like, it's cool to see them, but it's not cool to be around them, because anytime someone's like that, if you're viewed as a threat, then that's someone that is a threat in reverse, because they're going to take you as somebody that is going to do X, Y, or Z, and they're going to feel like they have an authority to end your life. And that's, to me, that's totally insane. That's on its whole different thing, but you can compare the protests that we're seeing like across the country to the ones that happened a couple weeks ago. I mean, there were literally armed militias in the face of police officers, and they did nothing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which, to be fair, that's what we want them to do.
Right.
But that's what we want them to do when they're around, you know, anybody else. But the fact is that they showed no restraint now, and they showed all the restraint in the world when they have people with literal, like, RPGs basically standing right in front of them.
Right. A man, like I saw a video. I think it was on YouTube, and a man just walked into a bar and he had like a whole bazooka on his back.
They were going into like Subways and stuff like that, like, you know, like, the sandwich shop, not the actual Subways.
Yeah,
and it's like they just had guns all over the place.
I'm like, that because that kind of stuff, man. I mean, black people get shot for having a pistol, and you walked into a Subway with a bazooka.
It's it's crazy. I mean, that's why we have to have these conversations, you know, like it's to get this information out there to acknowledge. And it's not putting anyone down. It's just saying, like, this is the reality of a situation. And, you know, a little bit going back to the education problem is, for me, I like reading about our history because it's so eye-opening. Like, it blows me away sometimes, like, that nobody talks about some of it.
Right.
And obviously it's, you know, it's for a reason. And the like I was saying, everything's politicized. So uh, when we talk about teachers having any sort of voice on this, it's inherently like you're taking a side, which it shouldn't be taking a side. Like what I was trying to say is if you murder like a 12-year-old boy, that shouldn't be like there's two sides. There are no two sides to that story. And
Right.
there is no two sides to when you have um, protesters and then you have neo-Nazis or fascists. Like that's not, they're not two justified sides. Um, so we have these escalating situations. So what, other than the education system, I mean, I obviously have a few things that I think need to be changed, but uh, as someone that actually has lived through some of these injustices, what do you think else could change in the criminal justice system, or just generally speaking in our culture, anything like that?
Um, Actually, so I put out on my Instagram a question with what do people, want me to talk about? And one of the things was, do you think that police should have to study psychology before they're made police officers? That was like an idea that I just haven't thought of. I mean, that for one would I think would be beneficial. Two, I think that the system in itself, do what you have to do, but I know it's easier said than done. Change it.
Mm-hmm.
Change it so that everybody has an equal level, equal opportunity, because that's what it comes down to. I mean, you got people in the projects who want to live in an area like you and I do, but the system doesn't even allow them to excel. So there's this one movie or one show called American Gods, and one of their quotes was, we have a system here that takes black children so fast from schools to jails, schools to prisons, and then the lucky ones go from school to the NFL, and they don't even get a chance to kneel. Like you're and that whole protest in itself um was just like, people think that it's going against the America, the flag. I want to understand where they're coming from. I just can't, because I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm an American. I love this country, but protesting America and the system of America is not saying that I disrespect the flag. It's not saying that I disrespect the troops, because it was never about that, and it won't be about that in the future. It's about the systemic injustice that everybody sees. So prison reform, um, just overall, systematic overhaul. Like I know it's easier said than done, but you got to start with the institutions, prisons, schools, all the way up to the White House. You gotta change it. You gotta change it. I mean, you had people mad because they can't sustain themselves enough because they're not given the same opportunity to get out of the ghetto, to get out of the slums or whatever. I mean, I have cousins who, are so like, who I love to death, but they can't excel because the system doesn't allow them to. I mean, that's probably the hardest thing that we all have to do, is we have to actually work 10 times harder to get to that same position that we were overqualified for than, say, a white man who just comes in and says, hi, nice to meet you, all right, and then can I have the job? It's we just have to work harder. So the system just needs an overhaul. The system just needs to change altogether. Like I said before, it's easier said than done, but we have to at least start somewhere, and that's how we change it.
Awesome. Yeah. And then I guess just my 2 cents on it for anybody that's listening that wants to dig into any policies more. And if for some reason this is your first episode and you never listened to any of these other episodes before, I talk about wealth inequality all the time. So looking into like how we got here, and if you want to check out my really deep dive with Jeff Kennedy, we talked about wealth inequality a lot because of uh, we're talking about systematic changes for the better here today, but in the 80s we had a lot of systematic changes for the worse. And we'll talk about we talked about Nixon and Reagan as well, but Reagan in particular set us back really far when it comes to wealth inequality, and that affects all of us, not even just one specific race or gender or whatever, but it specifically affects one race and gender more
Right.
than others. So
Right.
that's why it's important to realize that 99.9% of us are in the same boat in a lot of this stuff. So when people pit us against each other, like Chandler and I, he's black and I'm white. But guess what? A lot of what we can do is work together, and that's how we make that change happen. Because we can, and we have to acknowledge that there are differences, and that's obvious. But those differences make us stronger, not weaker. And they can't, like, for a kind of a skewed example, we get pitted against each other because of, say, a social issue like abortion. Like I was working the polls on Tuesday, and people came up to me, "Oh, so you're pro-abortion? You're pro-abortion?" No, I'm pro-choice. But we can disagree on that, and guess what? I'm still going to fight for you to have a higher wage, and I'm going to fight for you to have equal rights, and I'm going to fight for you to be represented by the actual laws and have justice in this country just as much as anybody else, even if we disagree on some social issues like that. But it's used to pit us against each other. So wealth inequality is another huge one to look into if you're listening to this for the first time. Demilitarizing the police is huge. So not even just we need to reform how we police and really the prison system, of course, like what Chandler said. But when we also look at demilitarizing the police, like the police get the excesses of the military. Like literally they get the excesses of the military. And if you're listening to this and you've never heard of that before, look up the military surpluses and how those get passed on to the police, and how our tax dollars are basically making a pseudo military out of a lot of our police forces. And look, I'm all about having. I don't believe in the abolition of police. I know some people do. I personally don't. But I think that if you demilitarize, you de-escalate situations like what we had in Doylestown the other day, where we did have agitators. We did have people that wanted to start problems. I heard of people, I didn't see them personally, but I did hear that there were some people with white supremacist tattoos and stuff like that all over the place. I mean, we don't want to engage with those people, and we didn't. But
Right.
luckily we had I personally believe, luckily, we had the police there, because if something did happen, we had some sort of protection. That's my personal belief. But I'd rather them not walk around with guns. I'd rather them not walk around in SWAT uniforms. I'd rather them be a part of our community. And that takes not just here in Doylestown, because most of those people are from around here. But when we talk about different police forces, it should be community police forces. It should be people from the actual communities that they live in. It shouldn't just be like, some random guy that drives in an hour away into New York, the NYPD. So that's another one. And then obviously when we're talking about Nixon and we're talking about Reagan, the war on drugs is another huge one that we need to end. We need to break that down, because if you are black, you are 2 times more likely to get arrested for possession of marijuana, even though the usage is the same. Actually, there are some stats that say that white people use marijuana more. So if that's not a clear injustice, to anybody listening, then I don't know what else to tell you on that one. Um, but yeah, so with all of that, is there anything else that you'd like to mention about what we did here, or generally speaking, what you want to see moving forward?
So one thing that I do want to tell everybody is that, when we look at this problem as a whole, um, I don't think that personally, I know that a lot of people do, but I don't think that the police are the Black community's true enemy. And I said this at the protest Monday. I don't believe that. I think that the true enemy to the Black community is a word called ignorance. Ignorance is the basis of all of our problems. And when we have people who don't, first of all, acknowledge their ignorance or take, their ignorance out on other people, people of color, then that's where the root of our problem stems from. The problem is that a lot of those ignorant people, as we have seen, have a badge in the gun. So what I'm trying to say is I know a lot of good people out there who are behind the badge and the gun, who do want to protect our streets, but we see that the whole the whole idea of there's just a few bad apples, and that whole argument right there. It was Chris Rock who said it. There's certain jobs where you cannot have bad apples. Like you can't have a doctor, you can't have doctors, you can't have nurses say a few bad apples or whatever. You
Or a
can't do
pilot?
that because right, yeah, he said
Yeah.
what if like American Airlines or something? Yeah, a few of us like to land. No, you can't do that. You can't do that. So, uh, we just need to have like a whole overhaul, like do another. I don't know what. I really wish I had the answer, like a lot of other people, but I just don't. But I do know that talking about these issues, even in more depth, and not just letting this whole protest die down, that's the solution, and we can work towards an overall, equality. Because I would love to say that this nation is equal. I would love to say that there's no divide. I would love to say that I have the same opportunity that a white man does. However, if we look at the facts, it's just not there. So ignorance is the main problem that we face today. Not only that, but we have leaders, not going to name names, but he sits in the Oval Office that, don't acknowledge what's happening. And then they just let, things go terrible. And it's a problem because, I don't want to have to walk outside of my house. I go for a run every day. As we've seen, it's almost like after I saw Ahmaud Arbery get hunted, because he didn't like it wasn't just like two people confronting themselves and he got shot. No, he was hunted for taking a jog. And if you hear the police report, and you hear the call that happened to 911, nobody's saying that Ahmaud is the burglar or whatever. So these guys assumed that he was the person, and this whole citizen's arrest thing, which you didn't identify yourself, you just walked out of a truck with a shotgun. I mean, there's nothing right that happened in that situation. Just like George Floyd, just like Tamir Rice, just like Trayvon Martin, the list goes on and on.
Yep.
And the thing is that, you know, Black people around the world are mad because this is just another thing that happened that shouldn't have never happened. And I don't know why, but it's almost as if, like, to me at least, it feels like this has been happening since like the dawn of time, because it just happens so frequently and we're just so tired of it. And we don't talk about doing anything, you know. And the more ignorant issue is that people are coming out with the statistic that, you know, all right, black people are actually killed less than police than white people are. All right, if you show me the facts, I'll look at them and I'll respect them. However, this is my rebuttal to that. If you tell me that white people, unarmed, innocent, are being murdered by the cops more often, then why is it that that statistic always comes out after a Black Lives Matter movement?
Mm-hmm.
You should be angry about that just as much as we are.
Absolutely.
But since you see Black people marching on the streets, fighting the injustice, that's when that statistic comes out the closet. Why is that? If you can't answer that question for me, then you have nothing that I want to hear.
And to piggyback off of that, that statistic is so bunk because I think it's I forget the exact numbers, but like it's the number nominally is so minuscule. The difference is so minuscule, and they're completely ignoring the size of population. So like if you're talking about white people in America, that's about probably 60 to 70% of the country, and then the Black community is at most like 15% off the top of my head. So if you're talking about nominal, like, you know, small statistical errors, well, you're talking about a community that's 4 times larger than another. So like
Right.
if they're equal or they're close to equal, then that shows the disproportionality of like what's happening. So that's why people do bring those stats up, but they're complete bunk. Like they, as much as they want to say like, oh, you know, white people get killed by the police more, just nominally. So, and again, you're right though. Like if that's happening, then we should be mad about that too,
Right.
because that's the government literally oppressing people.
Exactly. And I just don't, I never understood it to begin with. And I'm never going to understand it in the future. But what you said, yeah, that, you know, I learn something new every day. But yeah, I mean, like, think about that. You have people marching and protesting injustice. And I don't know who said it, but they said it so perfectly. I really wish I could say the name to reference it, but they said that, and you might be able to help me out with it, but they said white comfort should not be the cost of Black lives.
Mm-hmm.
So Black people are taking to the streets, protesting injustice that has been done to us, which, like I said, to us feels like since the dawn of time. Your comfort level has significantly decreased. So you, I want to call the police on us. You can, you know, bring out the statistics and do all that, but we're not going anywhere. So, I mean, you're either with us or against us, but I can tell you that from on our side, you know, it's almost like we've had the whole world against us since the beginning. And James Baldwin said it best: the story of America is the story of the Black man of America, because you have all these places that, for one, were built by slaves. You know, you got all these inventions made by Black people. You know, we just, like, think about it: music, you know, sports. We're not going anywhere. We're only, like, we want to be able to make America great. That's the whole thing. We want to make America great. because that whole slogan, Trump slogan, "Make America Great Again." Ask anybody when America was great for everybody, and see what they say. Was
Also,
it when? Well, go
I
ahead.
was
Go
going to
ahead.
say, also to point out that the slogan is from the KKK, but yeah, go ahead.
All right. See, there you go. There you go. I mean, was it when the Native Americans were being pushed from the land? Was it when Black people were being enslaved? Was it when civil rights, happened? I want to know in the single year when America was good for everybody. Because if you couldn't tell from my last name, I'm African. My father came over from Africa in the '80s to pursue the American dream. So I went there in August, and they all, like if you go outside of this country, like yeah, bias is there, but there is no other country that seems as racist as America. And it was so like eye-opening because over there, like they think that America is this, faraway land, magic. And then I gotta show them the news to be like, yeah, so this is what's happening. And their minds are like, wow, like we didn't think it was like this. So going back to that, I mean, don't get me wrong. This is, I'm a proud American. I love my country, but you know, I want everybody to be equal. So that's at the end of the day, that is the goal. I want everybody to be equal. I don't want to have to walk down the street and then have just my skin color is not a weapon. It's not, I'm not gonna hurt you. You can ask anybody anybody in this community. I know for a fact that my community, the people in my community love me. They tell me all the time, Chandler, we love you. But, you know, at the same time, it only takes me to be down on the ground with somebody's knee on my neck for them to understand that this is a problem. And I don't want it to get to that point. So I'm trying to make people see things from my point of view, from a Black man's point of view, because we've been treated like a threat for forever. And we're not. I mean, like, and there's this whole campaign going on with Black mothers and their children, and they're saying like, when did I go from cute to dangerous? Which is like, I'm looking back at my baby pictures. I'm like, I was a cute kid. I mean, I was never raised to hate. Personally, I was never raised to hate. I know that some people out there, a lot of people out there, are raised to hate another. I was never raised to hate. But you go ask a police officer, in Alabama or whatever, like they're not asking me these questions, are you a bad person or not? I have a target on my back and they don't even know who I am. So, and I got this all the time growing up, you're pretty, you're not, like you're not like most Black people. You're not, you kind of, what standard is there to measure how Black a person is? Because that standard was made by white people. So I want to know what's the criteria to measure me as a Black man. I'm Black because, for one, I'm blessed to be Black. I'm Black because God decided, hey, Chandler, you're going to be darker than everybody else. I'm Black because of my skin color, and I'm Black because of the community that I live in. I'm not Black because you decided I'm Black. I'm not Black because you said, all right, Chandler, you're too white to be like every other Black person. they always talk to me, Chandler, you know, you talk like a white person. So you're telling me that talking like a white person means talking, you know, being what's that one word? Coherent, lingual. I can pronounce all my words. That I don't talk slang. I don't talk in ebonics. So that's what you call talking a white person. So you're saying that the highest level of the way that I talk is to be like a white person. That in and of itself is like, that doesn't make any sense. So just the whole, and I learned this in my organizational behavior class. We all have implicit bias. We just need to acknowledge it. Don't get me wrong, I have implicit bias. I'm not going to say that I don't, because I know for a fact that I do. The Black community, we have implicit bias. The white community, we have implicit bias. Police have implicit bias. Government has implicit bias. But in order to make a better tomorrow, not only do we have to all acknowledge our implicit bias, but we have to talk about how we can eradicate hate. And that's all that it comes down to.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I guess in closing, I think it's important to point out that uh, during this like crazy time of unrest, and like I don't know the guy's name that was in Central Park that had the cops threatened to be called on him, or the cops were called on him
Yeah,
because
I know what you're talking about. Yep.
he was a bird watcher, and this lady
Mm-hmm.
didn't have her dog on a leash. But like, if you're listening to this and you made it this far and you still are a little like, I don't know, like where I lie, I don't understand, I need some historical context. Take a look at that video of that guy in Central Park, and then look up Emmett Till and what happened to him,
Yep.
because that is exact. And look up the Central Park Five and look exactly those.
There you go, Central Park 5.
Right.
Not only do you look not only look up the Central Park 5, but watch what was a Netflix series that they did?
I don't know.
I just watched it too. Central Park 5.
But you can feel free once you find it, because those
Okay.
that historical context is important to understand, like why that woman felt comfortable calling the police to take care of a minor inconvenience of putting her
Right.
dog on a leash. And
And
that
that
is
and that goes back to the white comfort. When white comfort is decreased, that's when they call the police.
yep.
That's,
And it's the
but
assumption that the police are going to come there and take care. I'm using air quotes. Take care of the
right.
problem.
I encourage everybody to go and watch When They See Us on Netflix. It's a story of the Central Park Five. Back in 1988, a jogger was brutally raped and left for dead in Central Park, and the the NYC Police Department, they had decided um, to open an investigation, and not only did they do that, but they went and arrested 16-year-old Black kids. So they held these 16-year-old Black kids for more time than they should have been, without any food, water, access to their families. And they ended up getting these 5 kids. And at the end of they didn't even get to the trial before that they were messed up. They were all coerced by the New York City Police Department to rattle each other, and they all 5 of them went to jail. So the New York City Police Department had acknowledged a problem that they made in 1989 rather, and they all I think it was 15 years, 16 years later, they were all acquitted of what they did because they actually found
The DNA
uh,
evidence.
uh, yeah, the DNA evidence, and which, first of all, going back to it, no evidence at the scene of the crime pointed to any of the five. Nothing. So they found out that a Hispanic kid did the crime that, and they didn't even look at the Hispanic kid. They just rounded up 16-year-old, 15-year-old black kids from the streets and brought them to the downtown police department, and then conducted their investigation. I encourage you guys to go watch it. It is a very emotional watch. I watched it with my family. We all cried. Um, and I also encourage you to watch American Son, which is about a kid about my age. He's biracial, and he gets stopped by the police. And I'm not going to tell you what happens because that was just spoiling it. But it's a very good watch. I encourage you guys to go watch those two.
Awesome. Um, and yeah, I don't know if I said this earlier, but like, it's crazy that these things have happened and in recently, because it's like, it shows that even during a global pandemic, this doesn't stop, that the
Right.
injustices still
Mm-hmm.
happen. So
Mm-hmm.
we just talked about Central Park Five. I'm not going to go through the whole story of Emmett Till, but please do like look that up, because that was one of the most eye-opening things I've ever seen. Just you
Mm-hmm.
can even and look up the story, and then look up, you can see pictures, and those are going to be like life-changing things to see. I can't do it justice, so just please do look that up.
Yeah.
And is there anything that you would like to share about like where to follow you? I know you were talking about starting a podcast, so if you
Yeah.
want to plug that, anything like that, your Instagram, Twitter.
So I do have to get back on Twitter, but my Instagram is Chandy, so CHANDY_K36. And I'm trying to start a podcast called Progress to, actually talk about how people from all different, backgrounds can actually move forward, because I do think that the main problem in America is that, one side hates on the other so much that we just repeal everything that happens good. No matter if it's good or bad, we just take it back. And then we try to no, go together, work with your neighbor, and then move forward. That's how we make progress. So I'm going to have different guests. Hopefully I have you on there.
I'm
And,
around.
all right, got, got my first guest then. So hopefully, we can work for a better tomorrow and actually talk about how we can make some change. So I do want to leave off on one note. And this is that everybody, every single one of us has a voice. Every single one of us. Um, Only thing is that we need to actually make ourselves heard. Um, that starts with just doing things in your own community. Go out and talk to people that aren't from the same background as you. Go and I invite you to go learn about their culture, and they can learn about yours. That's we're trying to make it better tomorrow. We're trying to make America great for everybody. And yeah, so we all have a voice. It just depends on who's listening, and a lot of people are listening. A lot of people are listening.
Well, I'll close by saying thank you, Chandler, for coming on.
Thank
Um,
you.
this is, like I said in the beginning, this is important because it's like I can come on here and I can say my piece, but it's not the same. It's not ever the same if you're not actually listening to other people's perspective on whether it's race, gender, um, just different parts of culture. Um, you can't fully get the picture until you've spoken to people that have different experiences than you. Um, and that's why I'm saying, like, a lot of the people that do listen to this podcast do come from, Bucks County or Doylestown or anywhere in Pennsylvania or whatever it is. And we do take things for granted, and we do. A lot of people don't recognize the privilege we have being white. So please do check out, and this is like a podcast is going to give you some homework, I guess. Please do check out everything we were talking about today. There's plenty of books. If you guys want to reach out, at Con O'Hanlon on Twitter, you guys can always reach out to me on there and ask for any of the books that I've read. And I can suggest anything like that. And it doesn't have to be on one specific topic. Anything that I know of, I'll send them your way. So yeah, thanks again, Chandler. I appreciate it. And if you guys are listening, follow the Con O Show on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and feel free to reach out, conorohanlon13@gmail.com, if you have any suggestions, topics, guests, anything like that. So thank you again, Chandler.
Thank you for the platform.
No problem. See you guys next time.